Perfect. Okay.
We're recording.
We're recording. Finally, we're here.
Yes, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, Janice. It's a real pleasure meeting you again through this amazing window. Dr. Samani, welcome again. Africa today is not just rising. Africa is leading. In a world where AI, web, and digital transformation are reshaping industries at lightning speed, how do we ensure that African leaders are not just catching up, but setting the pace? How do we bridge the leadership gap, foster innovation, and prepare the next generation to own the future? Today, we welcome a true co-leader, a woman who embodies transformation, innovation, and impact. Dr. Janice Samani is a global thought leader in business and technology, a diplomacy catalyst, and a mentor shaping the future of AI and leadership. As the CEO of FSG, an award-winning tech firm, and the visionary behind Fifth Wave, she's driving a revolution in digital leadership, scaling businesses and empowering the next generation of women in STEM across the world. But behind this powerhouse of change, there is a story, a journey that started long before the titles, the awards, and the impact. And that's exactly where we will begin today. Dr. Samani, let's take it back. Who was Janice Samani before she became the global leader we see today? From the little girl dreaming big to the force transforming leaders across the world. Tell us, please, more about your journey and about you. Thank you.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's such a pleasure to connect with you once again through the window, as you say. My Morocco trip was amazing, where we actually connected. But to think about where I came from and where this inspiration, if you will, for what I do actually came from, I would say that it stemmed from my very close-knit family. I had a fairly small family, actually, a brother, a sister, two siblings, a mother and a father, that were very much a part of laying down a strong foundation along with my grandparents. So that generational foundation, I believe, was definitely strong. If we're going to go back, we might as well go all the way back, right? Because I really think that it's important that, especially, that's what I found in Africa as well. I'll tie that into Africa, and then I'll tell a bit more about myself. But what I found in Africa is that there was that sense of connection of family, multi-generational connection. When I would meet a colleague and we connected, I ended up meeting aunts and uncles and mothers and mother-in-laws in some cases, and we would sit down and eat from the same plate. So I just wanted to make that connection, which is very close and near and dear to me. So from there, my father was in technology. My mother worked here and there, but primarily was at home. She was a stay-at-home mom. And so it was that continuous undergirding of family support and moving from the Midwest into Silicon Valley, which was during the time of evolution. That was during the time when IBM and Texas Instrument was just kicking off, and HP was just becoming no longer Xerox, was a primary source, but HP was in the fold. So my father was in technology, and he was actually one of the pioneers in this space, being noted as an electrical engineer, really working on robotics. They didn't have robotics engineers at that time. So I saw a lot of the evolution that was taking place here in the Valley. And I believe that subliminally, if you will, through osmosis, through environment, a lot of that excitement and evolution really did become a part of who I am. So moving on and going to college early, I took my exams when I was very young and went on to college before I finished high school. And it was an opportunity, but I did finish high school. They wouldn't have let me into college. But I moved on and began to really ask a lot of questions about why certain environments why were they that way? How were people getting access? Access wasn't a word then, but I began to think about, well, why do certain people get certain types of food or can and have that type of business and that sort of thing? Because of course my family, they were involved in politics and business and seeing a lot of industry. So again, that awoke my interest. So, in thinking about that, studying economics, going to Berkeley and city and regional planning and civil engineering, taking it to the next step of being more of a solver than an observer, I really began to hone in on what it would take to actually make change and who should be engaged in that change. And I realized that it wasn't a matter of sitting in a classroom, being a professor, or just studying the theory, but you actually had to go out and understand what the needs were of the people. So I continued on in my education. I was going to law school and decided to get married. So I found that that was more important. I built a foundation of more of a professional background. So I continued in civil engineering and city and regional planning, and then got a doctorate in other things and continued on in my studies. Meanwhile, I'm learning programming. This was the funny thing, I have to tell you. I was in graduate school and we were asked to do a problem on a mainframe computer. And I said, oh, okay, no problem. And I went in and I started coding. And the funny thing was, I learned to code when I was 13. And so I learned through COBOL and Fortran. So when it came time for me to actually apply it a few years later and to actually look at using Linux and some of the other more C++, well, actually it wasn't C++ then, it was C+. So to look at some of the programming languages, I was very comfortable. I began to use computer science in a lot of my analysis, and to this day, I continue to use it, which we can talk more about beyond the Web3 and what that looks like in today's current use. So
Amazing. Wow.
yeah, that's kind of what brought me to where I am now.
Oh, I'm really surprised, and what I keep in mind is the word solver. You
Hmm.
describe yourself as a solver. I love that. Uh, if we all think like that as solvers in this world, I think we could maybe find so many solutions and move forward from so many problems that we live in globally and in Africa today.
Yes.
So yeah, thank you for sharing your story and your journey since you were young, and I'm sure you had through these experiences you had a big dream. What was your dream? The
Oh,
biggest
goodness.
dream you had?
Oh, my biggest dream. Currently, can I share the one now or
Yeah,
the one prior?
whatever you want. The biggest dream you had when you were younger and
Oh,
now, and what
oh,
changed?
okay. Okay, great. When I was younger, I really wanted for people to know each other and for the world to be the kind of place that you could travel and get to know people and culture from around the world. And I truly believe I've made my life that happen in my life. And now I'm making that a reality in the context of smart cities. So I'm looking at how we can come together yet in another community form using technology to have wellness, well-being, good health care, good education, access to utilities, because in some
Mhm.
parts of the world, they still don't have some of the basic resources. Yes. So
Exactly.
that's where I'd like to take my dream next.
Amazing. I will jump from the smart cities to see the Beaba, to start from the Beaba, the core of leadership.
Uh,
Uh, we know that you are a co-leader. You are a leader in the business, in diplomacy, in tech fields, and you've worked across continents, from the US, America, to Asia, to Africa, and Europe. You've shaped businesses, influenced policies at the highest levels, but let's strip it all back at the core. And let's say, what do you believe is the most important trait or uh, thing that we should have of a transformative leader today in the digital world in Africa or in the world?
Yeah, great question. And that's something that has really been, I have to say, on my heartstring and in my mind for almost a decade now. Hence my book, Transformative Leader. So thinking about what does it take to be a transformative leader, to have a true impact in the world, and in particular in the diaspora in Africa, is to think about the agility, the incredible agility of the capital resources that are available in Africa are amazing to me. Being that individuals are speaking multiple languages, understanding multiple cultures, having the fluidity of going from one country to another. Africa is an amazing continent in
Mm-hmm.
which there are such viable resources. And of course, human capital is one of the key factors. So agility is one of the key focuses. Another is definitely the curiosity, the wonder, the amazement of what I can do to make sure that I can get my Wi-Fi, or as we say, Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So what can I do if I don't have that connection? How can I get Wi-Fi in my house? And not have to go to the coffee shop or whatever, or go to a hub.
Yeah.
How can I bring that into my school so I can educate the children? So that
Mm-hmm.
kind of curiosity of wondering and being able to shortcut in some cases, finding
Mm-hmm.
ways to streamline is amazing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Another is looking at the capability of long life learning. I think you and I have had this discussion. I think it's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing to
Yeah.
continue to learn. I It's amazing.
Definitely.
I continuously learn program languages. I continuously
Mm-hmm.
am on various podcasts or reading books, doing analysis constantly. As I share, I wake up in the middle of the night because I'm thinking of something and I think, well, what about this compared to that? And I'll write something for a couple of hours just to continue my learning, and my curiosity to pull that into play, and being able to go back to it and say, well, now let me research it. Let me do some investigation. Let me read more.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
so, as we continue to think about being transformative and the impacts that one could have over the continent and over the world, I believe that those three
Yeah.
are a key factor. And then there's a few more pillars that could dive into a deeper layer that would be more specific to the actual problem or challenge that one would have.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing thought and ideas. The point that you've listed, that I will mention maybe two or three: the agility, the curiosity, and the capacity of continuing of learning. That really reminds me of myself, actually, and trying to adapt and to be agile in some kind of situations. and also to be curious and stay curious and to learn every day. But sometimes it's not enough. There is something more that we should have. And I will come back to the dream. We should have the vision. We should have the perspective also. But those points are very, very important. And I agree 100% on it. And then when you talk about the capacity of continuing learning and training, I was thinking about the future and the future of Africa in terms of the digital. What is the next digital, if we talk about powerhouse, something huge? We know that Africa is the home of the youngest, world's youngest population. And yet digital transformation is still work in progress. We're not there yet in terms of AI, web, IoT. You talk about smart cities, reshaping global economies. What do African leaders need to do today to ensure that they are not just participating, but leading, creating, innovating in this new digital era?
Thank you for the question. That next layer of being transformative is to be adaptive, to educate yourself in such a way to be informed that you can be able to utilize various technologies. And on the forefront is definitely artificial intelligence. It permeates every aspect of our lives, from our cell phones to our electricity to the way that food is being produced, to car manufacturing, education as a whole. It permeates literally every aspect of our lives. So in order for transformative leaders to really take hold and to move forward, this is not new news. I'm sure AI has been a buzz for a while. We moved from this transformative digital transformation, if you will, a few years ago to AI overnight. And with that AI overnight, which has existed for almost 50 years now, mind you, it has now begun to seep into this web of information that we are never going to pull apart from. So with that said, it's adaptation. So it's becoming more aware, more educated as to how it can be utilized, as well as what it is exactly. It was interesting. I was in an office of an ambassador, and it was a lovely opportunity to meet with this ambassador, and they brought their staff, I was very honored to be able to speak with the staff. But interestingly enough, there was that sense of, well, I'm very curious about AI, and the individual was saying, well, they're familiar with artificial intelligence. So they were really put on the table, if you will, to say, well, what exactly is AI? So the ambassador turned to the staff, and the staff was like, not quite saying what it was, somewhat caught, if you will, because it becomes a buzzword. So we need to take it from this high level of buzzword into the true indoctrination and understanding of truly what it is. It's merely a tool that allows us to replicate, to be more efficient, to be more effective. And therefore, when you know more about a certain technology, you can adapt to it, you can control it more, and you can actually be a part of it. And to your point that there's this young, incredible opportunity in the diaspora on the continent of Africa with young lives, educate individuals, young and old for that matter, about how they can actually utilize these tools. Africa has the opportunity to leapfrog, literally, to take on beyond the problems that Silicon Valley, which is where I'm located, has actually had. and to now take the technology and apply it to those visions, those dreams, the what ifs. I
Yeah.
loved giving that question of what if to young people.
Mm-hmm.
What if you could do something? What could you build? What do you
Mm-hmm.
see? And actually, I did that a few years ago, if I may share. I was in South Africa, I was invited there to actually host a hackathon. It was a global hackathon, but it came out of South Africa. This was actually last fall.
Wow.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I was working with some young people at the University of Pretoria. So we went through this whole, it was an amazing opportunity. So I had the captive audience
Wow.
and we talked about what a smart city is to them. So they used various tools and we created a story about what a smart city would be. And there were
Mm-hmm.
teams and the like, right? Then I did the same thing when I was in Europe. And it was an amazing experience. But to hear the difference between what their needs were and what the needs were, or what their smart cities were in Central Europe. Then I did it again to refugees. I
Mm-hmm.
had a refugee audience from Croatia and Afghanistan, actually, which was very interesting. Part of Amnesty International. And to hear their story about what a smart city was. So if we could tap
Mm-hmm.
into the minds of individuals and be able to take those dreams, those aspirations, the ability and adaptability of the technology, understanding what it can do and how we can continue to actually create it.
Mm-hmm.
Because AI is a creating tool.
Mm-hmm.
You may have heard of generative AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Gen AI is just thinking about, well, what's that next generation? What does
Yeah.
that look like? So with that, you're actually training the technology. So be
Exactly.
careful what you put into your AI. Please don't be careful.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yes, and make sure that and I always advise, if you can make it private. In some parts of the world, you can't make it
Yeah.
private. It's, forbidden. But understood, if you have the opportunity to make it private, work in a private AI, whether
Mm.
it is API, GP chat foundation through an API, or whether it's some other technology foundation
Yeah.
base.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Wow. Amazing. And the word of education, educate, it's coming back all the time. I can see that from all the global leaders. And educate, but now you added another thing about education is experimentation.
Yes.
So you educate and you connect to people to experiment, to work on the process and to connect to, of course, the all the abilities we have today through AI to achieve the goals, the dreams, and achieve a high level transformation, if I may say that. So, and also transformation, but also progress.
And systemic, to address systemic
Yeah.
challenges. That's the beauty, because AI allows for us to utilize large information models. Large, and what that means is just a
Exactly.
lot of information,
Uh-huh.
historic information, current, and then you can do predictive.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use assumptions, hypothetical, like what
Mm-hmm.
ifs, to
Yeah.
actually think about what the possibilities are.
Yeah.
Could you imagine?
Yeah.
Without any risk.
Uh-huh.
If you're risk adverse, this is a chance for you to try things out
Yeah.
with no problem, because you don't have to concern yourself with the backlash or something bad, if you will,
Yeah.
something, undesirable not to come out of it. But the
Mm-hmm.
information that you put into it, and then you center that information around what your challenge is or what you
Mm-hmm.
want to achieve, then you have an output.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Very interesting, Janice. I was thinking about the transformation leaders that we want to see. Today, we have transformation era through AI that
yes,
we can
yes,
use through case studies in all different places in the world, and we can bring them in our local small villages in Africa. And
absolutely.
there are today even for free. So we just need to go in, dive in, and try to educate ourselves and discover more what we could bring us as potential to get to that transformation goal.
Yes,
I wanna link this transformation to your book, The Fifth Wave, Revolution of in Leadership. Maybe, if I may say that, is it's your upcoming book. For those who don't know that, the fifth wave of transformative leadership. Uh, this book hints at the major shift in leadership. What makes this book different from the others? And how can African leaders prepare themselves to ride this wave rather than swept away by it, more than AI?
beautiful. Thank you so much for the question. How this reading is different is because number one, it is human centered. It focuses on exactly the needs of the human being, which is in the forefront of economics, society, governance, all of those elements that we talk about as leaders and we think about because we have visions and, you want to make change, right?
Yeah.
But quite often, what I have found, and this was decades ago, the further you are away from the origin, the further you are away from the core of what you want to actually change, or the being a change agent, a leader, yes,
Mm-hmm.
or you want to encourage or sponsor, the further you are away from that, which is very easy to do, and actually it happens without us even realizing it because
Mm-hmm.
we're moving. Oops, excuse me. We're moving, we're growing, we're developing.
Yeah.
I'm getting excited. So,
Yeah.
so with that said, it's an opportunity for us to stay centered and come back to the
Mm-hmm.
origin of knowing who it's for.
Mm-hmm.
So this writing really does focus on the development aspect of knowing the individual and also knowing the technology. And
Mm-hmm.
in addition, knowing predictively what is coming down the pike and meaning what is moving forward in the realm of technology, the what ifs, the possibilities. How can these technologies that we are actually experiencing currently with
Mm-hmm.
AI, with artificial intelligence, and possibly what will happen down the road? I can
Mm-hmm.
throw out a couple of things. Thinking about large language models, how everything that we do and say and work through will be on actual platforms. Everything will be platform dashboard oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone will be able to do a 1-2 click and then be able to connect to your doctor, find out a particular, hopefully not a diagnosis, but pretty close.
Yeah.
Be able to, as we know, you can order a vehicle. You
Mm-hmm.
can begin to have clothing that fits your particular physique with a 1-2 click. Order glasses. Everything
Yeah.
is going to platform. So, with that said, the aptitude between jumping from picking up the phone or going into the office is a huge leap for majority of the population. I would say a good 90%, 80 to 90% of the
Mm-hmm.
population, because everyone is ramping up. even the young people, they're constantly ramping up. So, say for instance, in education, I'm a Fulbright scholar and I was invited to actually train teachers. So, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
facility trainer for faculty. And interesting, I was talking about how to use artificial intelligence in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And there were two people in an audience of over 100 people, approximately
Mm-hmm.
two, maybe three. Maybe there were a few that didn't want to raise their hand that said that they use AI. And I said, but why not? If
Mm-hmm.
you don't use it, guess what? Your students are using it.
Yes.
So you need to educate yourself and
Mm-hmm.
adapt to the use of it.
Indeed.
So
Mm-hmm.
part of that is the application and being able to utilize the technology in such a way that you try to get, at least if you can be ahead of the game, that's fantastic. If you
Mm-hmm.
could be with the game, that's even better because you are at the core. So anyway, we were talking about what makes the difference
Interesting.
with this.
Interesting. I had another question about the book. Why
Yes,
Fifth
sorry.
Wave? The name of the book. Why you
Yes.
choose fifth and the wave? Those two words.
Good question. Good question. I hope I'll go back to why this is so different, but humans are at the core. The key factor or the name fifth wave actually derived because the fourth wave is actual information, digital transformation. The fifth wave I predicted is informational transformation. And this came to
Wow.
me 15 years ago. I
Wow.
just, I've
Amazing.
been teaching it and talking about it for a long time. Finally putting fingers to keyboard and to actually put it into some context. But meanwhile, I've been talking about it and sharing, and I believe in knowledge sharing. So in real time, it allows you to be able to go around the world and speak and to provide workshops and that sort of thing to help individuals with that development and growth. So
Okay.
fifth wave is
Interesting.
this information era, and
Wow.
everything is about information.
Amazing. I'm excited to and looking forward to read it. So
Soon, late spring.
I hope that maybe you could launch it from Africa.
I would love that. I'm going to hold you to that. That would be
Okay.
amazing.
So you've mentioned something about teaching youth and
Yes,
teaching teachers. And when you teach, of course, when you talk about teaching and training, we talk about mentoring.
yes,
I know that you've mentored many women, countless women and girls in STEAM and tech. So we don't really move fast enough, I think, in those kind of topics when
mm,
we talk about women. So what's still holding us back in terms of engaging women in tech and STEAM? And what's your boldest piece or, the main advice for the next generations of African women who are stepping into tech and leadership?
amazing question. You may have to circle me back to make sure I answer
Okay.
everything that you asked.
No
Um,
problem.
One is that what holds us back is culture in some cases,
Mm-hmm.
expectation. I find that quite often, and that could be expectation of themselves because they've been in environments, whether it be in school or in their home. I'm just being honest. We're being
Mm-hmm.
completely forthcoming here that
Yeah.
has targeted, or excuse me, built parameters around what is expected and what is thought of as an appropriate job or what is thought of as an appropriate career,
Mm-hmm.
something of that nature. So what I like to encourage women, and you mentioned STEAM,
Mm-hmm.
science, technology, engineering. I say entrepreneurship, so it's an E squared,
Yeah.
arts, mathematics, and then I say M squared because I include medicine. I
Wow.
believe that it's an opportunity for us to tap into our passions. So if your passion is in the art space, you can still do what you fulfill
Mm-hmm.
in your passion and bring in technology into it. As I said earlier, everything is engaging in the tech space. So if you're into clothing design, you no longer have to draft by hand. You use CAD or use various elevated technologies in order to support your particular passion.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that to say is allow yourself as a female, and I mentor young men too, men also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Allow yourself to realize that you can be the the captain of your ship. Sometimes it does take explaining to your family members or significant other, if you will, that this is your passion. This is
Mm-hmm.
something that makes you whole as a person and allows for you to think and to grow as a human being. And more importantly, contribute to society.
Mm-hmm.
So allowing those walls to actually fall by the wayside, but knowing that you are doing what you know to be true to you. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's a intricate part of, I'm going to throw this out here. I hope this is okay. Wellness
Mm-hmm.
and well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we find is very, very important, especially everyone nowadays. I can't say women or men. Everyone has that sense that, well, maybe, my family expected me to go into medicine. They expected me to be a doctor. Instead, I want to be an entrepreneur.
Wow.
I want to develop some kind of new
Like so
technology,
many others. Yeah.
right? Yes, yes, yes. And so these kinds
Mm-hmm.
of things happen constantly. I couldn't tell
Mm-hmm.
you how many conversations I have. Or I'm not quite sure. I've finished my university, but yet I can't get a job. I studied engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Many, many women study engineering, but yet when they come out of the
Mm-hmm.
university, they're expected to go home.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what can we do? I say get together with other women that are like-minded, that have the passion that you have for a particular type of technology or product or good development. It could be agriculture, it could be cosmetics, it could be fashion, it can be creating a widget to go into a computer system. It could be
Mm-hmm.
an app. Whatever that is, get together with like-minded people to keep yourself stimulated and to
Mm-hmm.
develop the technology where you can actually move it forward
Mm-hmm.
and create and develop it. So I always recommend that never lose your dream,
Mm-hmm.
hold on to your aspirations. I mentored someone that was from Nigeria. I
Mm-hmm.
met him when in Nigeria. He actually asked me for an interview and we ended up having a conversation. I declined to do the interview, which was interesting. But we talked and talked for a good hour or so. And after our conversation, I did give him my contact information. He kept in contact with me and he says, okay, I'm ready to move forward. He had his journalism degree, but yet he was very fascinated by tech. So with that, I said, okay, well, study this, study that. I gave him a lot of free MOOCs,
Mm-hmm.
online education links
Mm-hmm.
and books that he could read to prepare, to get his mind adjusted and shift from being a writer into a technologist. So he thought he was ready. He said, well, I'm ready. I found a program for him actually in the United States. He
Wow.
came to the US and studied. He didn't do well. I said, well, now let's find out why. We went back and analyzed it. He says, well, I should have finished that class. I should have read this material. I should have practiced that programming. I said, okay, fine. There's nothing wrong with failure. There's nothing,
Mm-hmm.
you pivot. You change not your thinking, stay focused on your thinking, but you can pivot to say, what do I need to do differently? What should I have done differently? So with that said, he ended up taking the courses and more courses, reading more books, engaging in a network, building a network of individuals where he could bounce ideas and concepts off of.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, he actually called me one day and he said, Dr. Samani, I started a company and I'd like to
Wow.
get your opinion. I said, okay. It's actually an e-commerce company. So he's done exactly that. It's called Mama Cat. He actually created a company in which I sit on the board in an equity position, and he has vendors and is doing quite well. So
Amazing.
I say all of that. Thank you for letting me
That's
share that
mentorship.
story.
That's mentorship.
And
Real
his
mentorship.
name is Ray Newton, or Newton Ray, actually. But
Amazing.
I just admire his tenacity and his resilience. And I know that there's thousands, if not millions and millions of young African leaders. I consider everyone to be a leader because you all have thoughts,
Yeah.
independent as well as collective. Leaders that can have that spark, that all it takes is that connection, the mentorship, the network in developing their passion.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Janice, for talking about this area, which is the importance of failures and what we do with it, uh, and how we manage those periods. And I just had in my mind a quick, simple question about you. What was the main failure you have been faced in your life and you move forward, and how you did it?
I was not ready for that question. uh, well, let's see. I would say I was somewhat embarrassed, and I'm being very, very vulnerable here. Um, when I was in college. You can tell I'm not very apprehensive about sharing this. But I
Wow.
was in college and I went to my TA with the teaching assistant. I would never go to the professor, right? And I told them, I said, I don't speak up in class because this is not my culture. I was taught you listen, you take it in, and then you do the exam. But at Berkeley, I went to Berkeley and Stanford and a couple of other universities. So when you're in class, they expect you to speak
Yeah,
up.
exactly.
And I said, no, that's not what I was taught. You're the quiet, smart girl. You stay, you stay quiet. But lo and behold, I went to my TA, and because I wasn't passing the class, I was getting a C. And it was because I was not speaking up. I was doing well on the exam and everything, but yet I could not meet the expectations of the instructor.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to look deep into myself to
Mm-hmm.
know that, identify why I was failing, what that weakness was, but more importantly, what my strength was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I had to
Mm-hmm.
dive in deep and have a reflection, have a thought, have a talk with myself, so to speak, and say, okay, well, this information.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't like it, it could be, something nuclear calculus. Somebody might like doing that, so I won't call that out. But it may be a topic or subject or situation that you may not be comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about, well, what is my strength here? What do I know? Right? And if I don't know it, how can I learn it?
Right.
So I can change that opportunity into a strength, that
Amazing.
weakness into
To this.
an
Yeah.
opportunity.
Mhm.
You're doing this,
Yeah,
right?
it's
It's that growth.
connected. Right. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I identified what my weakness was.
Mm-hmm.
I was a bit, conservative and realizing
Yeah.
you don't talk and all of this kind of thing. But I said, you know what? I want to do well in the class. I want to do well in the university. And I am a leader. I'm going to do this. I'm going to, all of the things that I knew that I was aspiring to do.
Wow.
That's where I identified my strengths. That weakness of not speaking out, I began to put my hand up and to say, they
Wow.
need to hear my voice. My voice needs to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
But yet I think one of the key factors here is that I made myself vulnerable to understand who I was and to share that with someone that could actually understand. They didn't understand it because they were like, no, it doesn't matter. You have to do what you have to do if you're going to pass this class. So, but to say, once I said it, I said, I I have this strength. What am I doing? Why am I feeling like I can't?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Amazing.
indeed is what happened. And now I speak all over the world to thousands of people at a
Yeah,
time.
and many languages too.
So that's the funny thing. I went from zero conversation to talking with everyone.
And now you're with us on
Yes,
Colleagues for Africa's podcast.
thank you so much.
I'm honored to have you with us, either. Thank you very much, Dr. Samani. And you were talking about this strength and how we could transform the weakness or a challenge to an opportunity, and then
Yes.
find out the strengths that we could develop and I mean put under us as the basement, the foundations, because we are civil engineers. So I'm gonna talk
Yes.
to you with
Yes.
the word of civil engineering. So that those foundations, I think, are the beginning for something bigger. And I wanted to come back to this situation. Maybe at that time, were you thinking about your project, your life project, or your dream at that moment when you were at the college and facing those challenges?
No. No. I believe, oh, and it only because it was that period of my life when you're moving. And I don't think it's any different than any other period. We're
Uh-huh.
always in motion,
Uh-huh.
and we're going from the next thing, one thing to the next. I believe that in current time, I do. But then as a younger person, I did not. Because truly, you are building a foundation. You don't know what you don't know when you're younger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And basically, it's, well, how can I just be successful where I am? Right now, I need to pass this class. Right now, I need this TA to understand me. Right now, I need this instructor to give me a good grade.
Mm-hmm.
I want to maintain my honor.
Amazing.
So at that moment, it's more immediate gratification.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can begin to train ourselves and to take a moment, take a pause to say, what impact do we ultimately want to have? What goals are we trying to achieve? What
Mm-hmm.
objectives will actually meet those goals? What
Yeah.
do we need to do on an everyday task? You see, I'm building here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyday opportunity of
Mm-hmm.
making those connections to actually feed into those objectives, to actually achieve those goals, and
Mm-hmm.
ultimately have the dream.
Mm-hmm.
If we could just take a moment in our everyday to connect what we do and the actions that we have
Mm-hmm.
and what we want to achieve for the day,
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that we can reach those dreams, those aspirations,
Mm-hmm.
going through the layers, through the foundation that you so beautifully laid out initially, to say that we can actually move through these
Mm-hmm.
layers and build our nice structure, our house, where we can dwell and be incredible well-beings, and society contribute to society in such a way that we have an impact.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, the point where you described the building that house. And I would love to come back to the house and connect it to the smart cities and sustainability, because we know that you are also an expert in sustainability. How do we get those or put on the ground, on the foundations,
Yes.
the right initiatives or the right programs or decisions that we should have as leaders in Africa to build those sustainable houses and sustainable smart
You're
cities?
putting me in the hot seat here. Because we know it's about policy, right? We know it's about putting the right policies, working with regulators, if you will, to establish the foundations that make it streamlined to do a lot of the technologies that need to happen. But there's so many steps, the undergirding steps to that, to say there needs to be an awareness of what the strategies are, what the innovations are, what the potential, again, that human-centered design concept of knowing what people's needs are, because they're further away. Remember, they're off in the ether, and they're sitting in their office, and they may not be in the village. They may not be in the city, whether it be like Casablanca or if they're out in the countryside, they may not be in that environment. So they have a disconnection as to what is needed. So all of that to say, it gives us that opportunity to be able to understand better as to how we can make those connections and build out that linkage within policy and regulatory in order, so they need to connect with the community and get the community in the office and and go out to the community and understand truly. I mean, if it takes staying, in the on a safari for whatever, out in the country, in a rural community for a week to do that. I had a wonderful experience recently in Africa where I was going for just 7 days. And I ended up, this was my usual Morocco experience. I usually stay longer, but I was in Tunisia. I ended up actually staying 2 weeks, but it was an opportunity to go to various cities and to experience. I only ate Tunisian food. I began to learn some of the dialect, which was amazing. Talked to individuals, not staying in a hotel. I stayed with people. So everyday routines. Right? Well, where does the trash go? Oh, you have to walk it down the street to the corner. Oh, you mean I don't have a bin here? No. So I got to learn truly the needs and truly the challenges and truly the beauty as well of the lifestyle. Going into, just one other real quick example, going into a home where everyone lived on the first floor, and then you would go up the staircase and there was a public kitchen where people could come and dine. So they welcomed people into their home to actually have coffee and to have lunch. I mean, these kind of experiences would not happen if I would have stayed in the hotel.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to come to the people. You have to truly understand. So I put that challenge out to the regulators, to the policymakers, to the decision makers, to reconnect, to be a part. And I say this with as humbly as I possibly can. Just to connect, make that true connection. I'm doing an exercise with some of my students where I'm actually putting them in various roles, and
Mm-hmm.
they're innovators, they're advocates for the environment. I think there's like four different categories, and the fifth category is policymaker and regulatory. And then, so I'm having them come together. They each are going to have their own policy development idea
Mm-hmm.
framework and take into account all the economics that it entails. And then they're going to come together to talk with the policymakers, which is a completely separate team.
Amazing.
So,
Mm-hmm.
whereby they're actually going to meld
Mm-hmm.
a framework.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So
Interesting.
that's how we're going to
Wow.
make change.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be, and actually, I call this a policy summit simulation for a new economic framework.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very excited. We're doing it this weekend.
And we have to try to adapt this exercise to some schools and business schools in Morocco and all over Africa. I think it's a very, very interesting exercise. Maybe there is some other professors doing it, but that would be interesting if we could like create a platform where we could share those experiences and how the students live them, and what are the results or the feeling or the experimentation, what they have learned really through this
Yes.
exercise.
Well, I'll
Very
keep you
interesting.
posted.
Thank
That's
you.
it's for graduate students, MBA.
Thank you. So, what's the next? And I think it's the last question. What's next for the global and African leadership? If we could predict, for example, one shocking technology, I said more than AI 2 times ago, but that could shift and that will redefine how we will live and work by, let's say, 2035, 2050. What would it be, and how do African leaders and businesses make sure that they are ready for it?
Wow.
Maybe
Wow.
you have something in mind because you're in Silicon Valley. So,
I'm telling you, I'm telling you. Well, what is exciting is that we no longer have to have large computing systems in a room that is hundreds of miles away that's being cooled. We can actually use computers that are near us in our institutions, whether it be in our universities or our personal homes, to actually generate the kind of information that can be synthesized, meaning that the gathering of the information is where you're going to be able to move a lot forward. The technology is becoming closer to you, is what I'm getting at. The more complex, I don't want to throw jargon, but GPUs, the things that make the really cool movies, and all of that, the 3D is no longer being done over there. It can be done now on your computer. So as far as technology moving forward, it's going to continue to get smaller. We know nanotechnology was a phase that happened. So smaller, smarter, much smarter,
mhm,
that it is incorporating individuals that are actually contributing to its development. And that's what AI actually does as well. You can no longer go on for a search
mhm,
online and it not be impacted with artificial intelligence, which harkens back to going to the library and going through the archives of the old wooden boxes with the paper, right? So
mhm,
what you're seeing it move faster, you're seeing
mhm,
it move swifter and more streamlined. And the forward thinking of technology is to know that the implementation of these technologies is continuing to impact us everywhere we go. And for individuals that live in rural communities, you too are being impacted. A lot of people think because I live in, in the country or whatever, in a rural area, that they're not being impacted. I
Yeah.
worked with farmers on their actual pardon me, yield, to increase their yield. And everything was done on the phone to determine the soil, the texture of their soil, the nutrition of their soil, when it was time to actually rotate or till the actual products that they were growing. So it impacts us on every level, and we all are involved in the engagement of technology. So it's a matter of understanding what your particular needs are, what you need to learn, how you need to advance. And sometimes, there's going to be that resistance of saying, well, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. But it's from the idea of you were talking about sustainability. Sustainability merely means long-term adaptability, long-term survival, long-term engagement, long-term. That's what sustainability is. So with that said, we are all in that space of looking at sustainability, whether it be our food sources. So we're looking at supply chain. I'm sure many people have heard about supply chain concerns, whether you grow the food, and I'm sticking with the rural concept, but you're growing the food in your village, the couscous or whatever it may be, right? The yams. And then they're going to be shipped, or they're going to go out into the village itself. All of that has to deal with technology. Every aspect of it. Even if it's just knowing that your neighbor may need 5 pounds of yams, which are not that much because they're pretty big yams, but they may use 5 pounds or 10 pounds of yams, and you need to know how much you need to grow so you can give them 5 pounds, give them 10 pounds, so you can continue to grow your crop and know what impact you could possibly have from your village, from where you are to where they are.
Interesting.
I
Thank
hope
you
that
very much.
answers
I really like
question.
those, again, that point of connection and how we think or we rebuild our vision about sustainability in terms of long-term vision. Always, we had this kind of conversation a few days ago about how we could integrate sustainability and development into their minds, into the minds of leaders, our students, or people who are working on strategies from scratch, not waiting till the end and then start thinking about how we can implement sustainability or sustainable solutions. So yes, thank you for the reminder, for this strong message. And I would ask you the last question. What is the last advice that you could give to young African leaders? And what is for you leadership in 1 or 2 words?
My advice would be maintain your dream, your aspiration. Think big. Think big. Bigger than you could ever imagine. And you too can actually make it come true. Work together, collaborate with others, build that network, identify mentors. I always say get 3 mentors. Why 3? Because you need someone that is either doing what you want to do, aspiring to do, someone that can come alongside you, that you trust, and someone that's in a particular industry where you are now. If you're in school, get a professor. If you're in government, find someone in your administrative office that you can connect with. So build your network and aspire to continue to do bigger and better things. And whatever that dream is, it can be true. It can come true. I truly believe that. It has for me and for many, many people that I have worked with.
Dr. Samani, today you've given us insights that are not just thought-provoking, but game-changing. Thank you very much. Leadership, I asked you the question about leadership in 1 or 2 words. How could you define that?
Leadership. I believe that leadership is having an idea. It starts with a dream, starts with what do you want to be when you grow up? What impact do you want to have? And believe it or not, they say leaders are actually not born. You hear some leaders are born. You hear some leaders are grown. I believe that it's in everyone's DNA, and in some it's in their RNA. It's in the bed of their helix. But indeed, it's an opportunity that the environment that you're around, that network, that connection, the family, the country, the culture, the values is what feeds you and builds that sense of leadership. So what is leadership? Let me respond.
Thank
In
you.
2
Yeah,
words.
leadership is today's word. Is no longer about catching up. It's about owning also the space, as you say, to connect with the family, with the friends, with the mentors, with the education places. Africa indeed has all the potential to lead, to dream big, but leadership must be, as you said, intentional from the beginning, innovative and inclusive also. For
Absolutely.
every co-leader listening, whether you are an entrepreneur, policymaker, student, or tech enthusiast, the future is yours to build. The question is, are you ready and preparing for it? Or are you waiting for it to happen? Dr. Samani, thank you again very much for sharing your wisdom and vision with us today. This conversation is just the beginning. And for those who are listening, if you find or you found this conversation valuable, interesting, please share it and keep the dialogue going. Share your thoughts, tag a future leader, or let's build Africa where we grow together, that we want to be and where we want to be together, as sustainable as it should be and connected. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janice.